Today, I would like to introduce some starting points on a research that I am conducting on a new project, Botto project, that it's also part of the project that you already mentioned, that I am leading from here, from our center, Digital Media Culture, Intercreativity and Public Engagement. I am especially interested in new dynamics in digital cyber culture, on intercreativity. How do we interact with others in order to create new outputs? And previously this morning, the Megadungeon has been defined as a procedural space. I will focus on Megadungeon as a new media public landscape to redefine this concept of co-creativity in Web3. The goal is, to experiment with dungeoneering from digital humanities and media art. We will map intercreative practices to reshape, to redefine all categories as art, artist, curator, public, the artwork itself. So here we have a lot to do, a lot to say. We don't have so much time. So that's why I was mentioning that it's like a starting point, and maybe in the afternoon we will have more time to reflect about that. Botto is a project collaboration between 11 Yellow, Carbono, and the main artist of this project, that is the creator, Mario Klingemann. And it's interesting because it's a generative artist governed by the community. I am especially interested in understanding which are the dynamics of this community, how they decide how is going to be, well, the future of Botto, but also Botto itself, that it's the creator, the main, the soul of the project, that it's a artificial intelligence artist. And Botto creates every week 350 art pieces and presents them to the community, and the community votes on these art fragments. The votes are used as feedback for Botto's generative algorithm. So here it's also important that this first year, Botto is learning from the feedback it receives from the community. And these interactions, these dynamics are the ones that are generating also new spaces and metaphorical conceptual spaces for creative, the creative field, the creative future of media art itself. And depending on this interaction, Botto will learn, and altogether will determine the direction that will take the next series of art pieces. Once a week, Botto will put one art fragment to the auction on SuperRare. And here I'm going to do also today a kind of Web3 literacy, because some people maybe don't really understand how it works, also the online colleagues. And SuperRare was launched in 2018, is a non-fungible token market for digital artists and fine art collectors, and is one of the most elite NFT Ethereum art markets. So that's why it's also interesting, and it's important to understand where is the space, the virtual, real space in which everything is going on. Ethereum is an open source blockchain, and also an interesting information is that a couple of weeks ago, on the 15th September, Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake consensus mechanism. And it means that the energy consumption rate was reduced by about a 99.95%. Okay, let's see if it's true. It's wonderful, because we are also very worried about this, the impact, the ecological impact of these spaces that have another analogical reality that we should reflect on. The first art piece that was created by Botto is here. You can see it from this slide, and is Asymmetrical Liberation by Botto in 2021, in October of last year. So now we are celebrating the first anniversary of this project. And this was meant in, as I was saying, one year ago. The Genesis period will last 52 weeks. This week is the 51st. So next week is going to be the conclusion, the final week of this starting period. And my purpose being here in Venice was to understand how it really works. And I have been in contact with the protagonist of this project in order to have an opinion, to understand how it really works, how are these intercreative dynamics. And this is what I would like to show and to share with you. Everything starts from the text prompts, and depending on these inputs that Botto gets, from a model called clip, everything happens. And the final outputs, the visual outputs are very interesting. I will show you some of them, and maybe later we can discuss if you like it, if you don't, and how it's going to be the future of this project. But this is very experimental, and this is maybe the most interesting part. But here again, we see that the human-machine co-creativity is not something that just belongs to our present, but has been here for a very long time. From media archaeology, I would like to make some connections to the past. And here we see how this human-machine co-creativity is considered as a collaborative activity between a human and a machine driven toward an artistic goal. How can we create together with the machine? This is very, very inspiring to me. And here we see an image of the chess playing Turk that probably you have seen. And it was from the 18th century. And the possibilities of automata, these tools for assisting creativity, were from playing music, singing, sketching. And this is exactly what Botto does somehow, but it's just focused in this first period on drawing, but the possibilities are very open. We have also from contemporary art, many interesting creations, but also from novelists as Hoffman, Mary Shelley, also artificial intelligence theoreticians like Carswell, the cyberpunk culture from the 60s, and also in cinema, like Matrix, for instance. So here we have always this myth of the rebellious superintelligence that probably we are afraid of. But here the point is, okay, how can we learn? How can we create together? To me, it's the most important side of this story. How can we create and learn from each other's? And here we have some examples also from posthumanism and bodybuilding. This is something I have studied some years ago. 12 years ago, I published something related to the role of futurism in posthumanism and digital culture. And some of the artists that can be related to this idea are Sterlach for sure, Marceli Antunes. And here we see how to extend our potential creativity through our bodies, through this synthesis that can be something bigger than us. And what about the human condition, the machine condition? Here, what is interesting is to understand how machines can creatively express their existence. And from this essay that I really think it's very good on the machine condition and its creative expression, we have some goals to reflect about, and I am especially interested in how can be enhance the human creativity through support tools. Also the public engagement around issues of artificial intelligence. This is something we can reflect about. And also how generative artificial intelligence systems will be able to creatively express aspects of their own existence. And here we are talking about empathy too. That is a very huge topic in contemporary art. Well, there are many questions about how is going to be the future of AI. But again, looking back to the past, I would like to let you see this conjunction between what futurism at the beginning of the 20th century was launching through the manifestos they were constantly publishing, and also the Botto project, how there is a very big interaction and intersection these different moments in history. Here you see L'arte meccanica, Manifesto futurista by Prampolini, Pannaggi and Palladini in 1923. And here is interesting because the machine is a source of creative inspiration. They said, noi futuristi imponiamo alla macchina di strapparsi alla sua funzione pratica, diventare un'altissima e feconda ispiratrice. And there is a sort of dialogue between these two manifestos. Last year, in October, was published this manifesto, the Decentralized Unicist Manifesto by Botto, in which we have Another situation is the machine that is asking for creative participation, but then is a sort of dialogue between them. And I love this way of acting to publishing manifestos to say, okay, this is our aim. We're going to launch it all around the world. So again, there are some connections between our present and the past. And here, talking about Megadungeon, it's interesting to understand again, which is the role of latent space that you have mentioned before. It's about data compression. Here we have an image in which there is a chair, there is a table, and which is the possibility, which is the space in between, the concept through data compression. Well, the output will be a chair, but we have a black chair. And it's very inspiring to me to understand these potential states. And this is how Botto works, looking through these connections between different realities. Here, Ekin explains, if I have to describe latent space in one sentence, it simply means a representation of compressed data. Zero space can be defined as a space where all the zero vectors live. And these hidden spaces, this new dimensionality is what matters for the future of media art under the influence of AI. We have other examples again from other artists, from other researchers. And regarding machine learning, art space, here we have the generative art pioneers, for example, Vera Molnar, and we have an exhibition in Murano that is part of the Eventi Collaterali of the current Biennale d'Arte. And it has been created by Francesca Franco. She was very influential in the 60s with her algorithmic drawings. Also, we have Harold Cohen. We have many other examples. We don't have so much time to mention all of them. But also we have artificial intelligence robots as artists. And we have here Aida, for instance, that she's an ultra-realistic humanoid robot, something completely different from Botto. There is not this side of giving a face or this human side of the situation. We don't have that with Botto, but we have some references from the past. And regarding AI artists, today, well, there is a growing number of references. We have Refika Nadal, Obvious, but again, the differences are very clear about what they are developing and what the Botto project want to reach. And also, for instance, the curator-based autonomous artists. One of the first examples was this one that you see here, a plantoid that was exhibited at the Burning Man Festival. And the artist was Primavera De Filippi. And in this case, we have these autonomous artists that can ideally, in a fully closed economic substrate, create art, sell it, and incentivize participants to improve it. So again, here, the DAO idea, the community is so important in the process itself. That's why this new situation is reshaping all of our roles. It's not very clear, but now we are reflecting and we are trying to figure out what's going to happen. And this is, again, something very experimental. Botto, it has done several interviews, and it's also very cool to read these interviews. And in this case, Mario Klingemann, the creator of the project itself, well, is behind these interviews, but in one of the most recent interviews in February of this year, the introduction was, some say Klingemann is the man responsible for creating Botto, others say that Botto is the artificial intelligence behind creating Klingemann's art. What can be agreed upon? These two collaborate together. Collaboration is the key word here. Again, it's not to fight, it's not to be afraid, it's to collaborate and see what's going on. And this year has been the first year, the Genesis period, and many results are, well, focused on trying to train Botto to see how Botto conceives the art. And in this interview, Botto said, The secret to success at art is not trying to predict what people might like, but rather to work on a style and a body of work that reflects my own personal taste. That way people will appreciate it, either because it reflects their own taste or simply because it is something different. I am still working on that, but I feel that I am learning quickly. And after this interview, the interviewer, the journalist, says, I am speechless. My interview ends with Botto, leaving me questioning my own empathy level. Perhaps just like in Blade Runner, the grand irony is Botto has revealed that I am actually an artificial intelligence bot. This game it's also something that we should reflect about. And the community, there are 5,000 users. Here you see where they come from. And the users use a currency called Botto to stake and generate voting points. And here, from the interviews I have done to Mario Klingemann, the creator, the crypto investors, at the end, my idea is that the most powerful side is that there is this tension between the aim of the project on the experimental side and the realistic side of people that are investing in order to get money from this experimental project. But I don't see this as something bad. I think that it's given the real situation of blockchain and how these forces have to come to a point, a common point. And for instance, Mario Klingemann, he thinks, he believes that the incentivization has to come in terms that if you are very active in Botto, in the community, you will have more voice, your voice will be louder. So this is the democratic side of the project. But crypto investors, they say, okay, if I spend more money on the project, I should have a louder voice. So here I find that it's the point that who knows what's going to happen at the new stage. But I believe that the creator, Mario Klingemann, he's going to fight in order to go on with this idea. If you are very active and you are collaborating to train Botto, you are going to be more protagonists and you are going to be aware. And yeah, if we want to experiment, that's the way. But it's also true that at the end, blockchain is very dependent on the market dynamics. So everything, it's so interesting to understand and how they will really figure out a way to still work together. I am pretty sure it will happen. And from social networks, I got also a lot of information from Discord, Twitter, and I wanted to show you this one because it was published last midnight. And here it was announced to the community that the Genesis Period's final mint will happen next week, what I was telling you. And they are also announcing that the community has to decide the new name of the next period, the new dynamics, how it's going to work. So it's something that has to be consensus. And yeah, let's see what happens. Nobody knows. Maybe they have some general ideas about the experience they had, but they have to work together to understand what's going to do Botto. And in the conclusions, I'm going to tell you some keys that I found during these last weeks. Here, I want to show you how it really works, how to train Botto.
Voting is at the heart of Botto. The community's feedback is what guides Botto's creativity. It determines which fragment will be minted and sold in the weekly auctions, and it passes on the community's tastes and interests to the AI. Every week, Botto presents the community with a collection of art pieces, known as fragments, to vote on. Bottonians use their voting points to manifest their opinion through the voting app. Botto's fragments are displayed side by side in pairs. Going through the pieces, you'll come across different styles and surprising visuals. Users cast their vote by clicking on one fragment or the other and can give more or less weight to their vote by adjusting the voting points in the slider. They then submit their votes through a signed and gasless transaction that seals their vote and stores the information. Voting is your most important contribution to Botto. Join us and help us create the new masterpiece.
There are so many interpretations in such a situation with a very innovative project. We are focusing on these dynamics, on these spaces, public spaces of interaction, intercreativity. From the interview to Mario Klingemann, some of the outputs from this Genesis period were, well, this great international presence and this rich training period. Also the impact in social networks and these dynamics unpredictable from the market forces and the interaction with crypto investors, some pressures perhaps, some new dynamics, but this is why it's interesting because it's alive, unpredictable. Goals. Mario wants to keep this honesty with the artificial intelligence, despite some of the results, or, well, he defined it like horrible kitsch, but okay, if we are experimenting, we don't control the final result. That's the aim. He doesn't want to be a sort of ventriloquist or not even creating this 3D avatar to interact with Botto in a humanist way. And the new stage will be probably on this sense, to allow Botto to use more models, to go to DALI, for instance, and to experiment how it's going to be the outputs using these new models. Also different types of voting processes. Again, in terms of community DAO, it's going to be something to be studied, to be more based on open source, and to expand the range of media as the automata. They were not just drawing, but they were creating music. So here, after these interviews, this experience, after looking to Botto inside, I created this analysis with some strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. I really think that it's a project that is pioneering the field of artificial intelligence, but it's true that it requires a long time to train Botto to really have a particular, a unique style. This is something that is a very, very long-term determined. Also, the quality of the current results probably, well, it's difficult to judge because at the end, again, it's something experimental. To play on it's good or bad, I think it doesn't make any sense. It's to see what comes up. Opportunities. To me, this is the very best part of the story. I would love, for example, to create whatever, because talking about exhibitions in that sense doesn't make many sense, but to explore curatorship, collaborations, giving some prompts and to see which is the final output. And this interaction, this co-creativity, how to work with Botto and what's going to happen. Open this artistic expression to different disciplines. And also the evolution will be, I think the rhythm will be higher, because if Botto is working with several models at the same time, it's going to be quicker, faster. And this is something that for researching is something that we have to, again, to study. And what we have seen is that it's very dependent on new AI systems and also the fluctuations in the market. So this is probably the negative side of the story, and also the eco impact. So here there are a lot of concepts to express, a lot of things to reflect about. Something I really like to mention before finishing is a sentence that I read from a tweet in 2021 by Mario Klingemann. And he was talking about this idea of building an autonomous entity that is able to be creative, or at least co-creative in some form, goes back hundreds of years. And he was talking about co-creativity, probably in not a very positive way. And to me, it's exactly the opposite. It's like, wow, this is the point, to be co-creative with Botto. That's what really interests me, at least, to see those new spaces of interaction, of public interaction. And co-creation is even more powerful. And maybe I am very on the futurist side. Marinetti influenced me a lot. And I am very enthusiastic about this interaction with the machine. So we are not fighting. We are trying to explore new ways of creation. And this is why it's so cool to understand the future and the present of Botto, and how it's very fan-based project, that the community rules at the end, our rules. And which are the upcoming projects? Well, the first stage will be a publication related to this first stage of the research. And then this month, I'm going to go to London to participate in a roundtable with Klingemann and some other experts. And there is an exhibition also there in London, Botto, a culture of co-creation. So again, co-creation is a keyword. And probably if everything works, the idea will be to go on with this project and publishing a monography. And yeah, this is something that we have to reflect from the results of this first stage. And yes, this is everything I would like to introduce. I really find that it's going to be more useful to discuss maybe in the afternoon, because this is like the input, but there are so many things to be said, to reflect. And for me, the aim was to make you understand a little bit how Botto works. And later, probably we have more time to discuss. Thank you very much.